Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's the SCB Steelers Podcast presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. Hello to everybody down there. And we are very proud to be part of the Variety Sports Network. Again, make sure you check out everything they've got going on. Lots of great college football podcasts for those of you into the college football stuff. A little bit of baseball there, too. Obviously, a lot going on. The Steelers roster is set in what I would call jello. Certainly not concrete. Lots of things there. Obviously, most of you are aware by now, our long national nightmare is over. The saga that is Brandon Aiyuk to the Steelers is over. It's not going to happen, right? And, well, what did we say? He wanted $30 million. He signs what? 4-year, 120.
Yep.
And I'm not good at maths, but I think that's around $30 million. And we'll dive into all that stuff. You'll notice Ben's not here. This is 2 nights in a row. If he is gone next week, he is immediately fired. And he knows it. He's playing with fire here. He's playing with fire here. This is a big time professional program, and there's no way you can miss 3 weeks in a row without there being some repercussions. I'm just going to lay it out right there. Scarps, Ian, welcome into the show. Great to see you guys. Ian, can I relay that information?
Sure, that's fine. So I am wearing my Stairway to 7 shirt tonight.
Quite appropriate.
Quite appropriate, because not only are the Steelers embarking on a quest, the preseason is over, the regular season is about to begin, to win their 7th Super Bowl, but also my family is on our stairway to number 7. So
damn, man.
We're having another boy. We're doing January.
Oh, my God. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, my
amazing,
goodness, man. You're more potent than a fart in a jar. You are lethal. I love it.
My Cromartie index is solid, let me tell you.
Ian Rivers over here.
Ian Rivers. That's fantastic. I'm reminded, however, Ian, recently you and your wife took the kids on a little trip, little summer vacation.
Yes, we went to the beach last week, and I tuned in when Ben could not.
Yeah, you did, and you were drunk, and we know Scarps was.
Casey was drunk. There's a difference.
My point is, I seem to recall you putting in our chat that about the last half hour, 45 minutes of that drive pushed you to your limits as a parent, and you're now just going to add to that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow, you are amazing. I am just in awe of you and your wife. You guys are amazing. Best of luck. I hope everything goes well.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. You slipped that one in there, buddy. Literally. Yeah, literally. We had no knowledge of that. No knowledge of that. That's right. That's right. That's why we're on at 10 o'clock. It's not quite a family show anymore. Welcome in everybody that's watching live. Welcome in everybody that will watch on your own time and on the audio. And is Ben touring with Steely Dan? That's funny. I love Steely Dan.
Ben's not cool enough for Steely Dan.
No, you're right. You've got to be one cool dude to be with Steely Dan. And I don't know that Ben classifies. So I really wanted to open this show by talking about the roster. And we'll get to that.
I threw things off.
No. I don't mean that, Ian. I don't mean that. What I mean is, obviously, I think most of you know Brandon Aiyuk is a 49er, and he's going to stay that way now. He's not coming to Pittsburgh. Okay. There's a couple of different ways to dive into this. And some of the folks in the chat have already kind of gone there. And so that's where we'll go to. You know, was this a situation, and Scarps, I'll give this to you first. Was this a situation where Omar Khan traded Deontay Johnson and probably in the back of his mind thought, I'm going to be able to pull something off to get a viable replacement? And now it hasn't happened. Do you think that's what he was thinking?
I want to say this before I get into it, but I think Omar is doing a good job. Time will tell, though, right? I've been very upset about the sort of conversation on the Bird app about Kevin Colbert, because everybody thinks Kevin Colbert was just some bum and he didn't do anything, and Omar can do no wrong. Well, this is Omar's first mistake, and it's a big one. And I appreciate that he's forging his own path, but this is a huge mistake. And if he traded Deontay Johnson thinking that he was going to be able to, pull something off, that's not good. You got to be thinking multiple steps ahead. They had, after they traded Deontay Johnson, they had multiple options to get a true wide receiver too, whether that was through free agency or through the draft. And it was funny because earlier this week, Steelers fans finally caught on to the John. There's a guy, the Texans named John Michie. They say I don't know ball, but they don't know who John Michie is until like 2 days ago,
right?
And then people are like, well, maybe people are like, maybe we can get Robert Woods. They could have had Robert Woods last off season, and they didn't do it. So this, it's a new regime. It's not. Tomlin, Mike, and Omar have been together since 2007, and Omar has been there since 2001. Omar was there just as long as Kevin was. This isn't a new regime. Yeah, are they maybe adding players or getting rid of players? Yes, but look at the way they structure contracts. They're the last in the league in cash spending. They don't give any fancy guarantees and bonuses and all this shit. They just don't do it. And I'm not saying that was the holdup on Aiyuk,
right?
But I'm saying that if Omar, and I want to be fair to Omar because it's not a new regime. There are multiple people that need to sign off on this. If Omar or the Steelers really wanted Brandon Aiyuk, they could have had him, because San Francisco was ready to deal him to the Browns or the Patriots because their offer was good enough. They had enough draft compensation and a player coming back, but obviously the Steelers didn't match that. And the 49ers were like, okay, well, if he's not taking that, then we're just going to wait this out. So anyway, so get back to your point. Omar messed this up. He did, and this is his first big blunder. He'll have more. He'll also have more wins. And I commend him for trying, but it didn't work.
Ian, I'm going to let you answer, obviously, the question there too, as to whether or not Omar played this well, poorly, or not. But just real quick, if you're San Francisco, you still got to pay Brock Purdy. You still got an offensive tackle in Trent Williams that's holding out. Here's my question regarding them. If they don't win the Super Bowl, will this have been worth it for them?
Ooh. I mean, winning the Super Bowl is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. It is
very hard.
Yeah, as they well know.
Yes. And they're in a window now. I mean, a quarterback on a rookie contract is the biggest market inefficiency you can have. And they're in a window to take advantage of that. It's going to be interesting to see where Brock Purdy lands on the quarterback scale. So, I mean, there are guys who have, never been to a conference championship game, let alone a Super Bowl, who are at the top of the league pay scale for quarterbacks right now. And, is given the success multiple quarterbacks in San Francisco have had between Garoppolo and now Purdy in the Shanahan system, is San Francisco going to be willing to dole out $50 million a year for Brock Purdy, who is a 7th-round pick and has played very well? I mean, he's performed very well. But are they going to say, hey, we can just go out and find another guy like this to plug in? Because Garoppolo performed like shit everywhere else he went other than the Shanahan system. So, I mean, he had some flashes in Vegas, but like not nearly as good as he was. I mean, heck, he went to what, a Super Bowl and a conference championship game in San Francisco, and so I don't know. We'll see what they do. Glad it's not our problem. But I mean, heck, I would love to have a team capable of making a Super Bowl, but we're in a completely different spot from a cap standpoint. I do want to go slightly different spot to where Ryan went on. Is this Omar's first mistake? And I think Ryan was getting there. I don't think not trading for Brandon Aiyuk was a mistake. I think not addressing the wide receiver room in greater, not adding anything more than a bunch of wide receiver fours was the mistake. And I think Ryan was getting there. I just wanted to kind of articulate that point that
I can't get there like you, Ian.
Here we go.
You guys, it's gonna be a night, isn't it?
It is.
You knew that ahead of time, buddy.
I did. I walked into this. I have literally made my own bed here. So at any rate,
soon to be 7 beds. And yours. So that's 8. There will be 8 beds. Jesus, God bless you, brother. That's amazing.
So, all right. So to wrap up the point, like when we had talked about this, was Aiyuk and his agent kind of just using the Steelers to get a better offer out of San Francisco? Were the Steelers going to make Brandon Aiyuk the highest paid Steeler of all time that wasn't a quarterback? Were they going to pay him more than TJ Watt, who they drafted, who's a defensive player of the year? So, I had a hard time seeing it happening. So I think the bigger mistake is, not adding, trading away a wide receiver 2 in Deontay Johnson and not adding anything more than a bunch of wide receiver 4s to the roster. So I think that's the bigger mistake. Missing out on Aiyuk, I never really thought we were going to get him all along. I mean, I think last week or a couple weeks ago, my nickname on the show was, no, we're not getting Aiyuk. Next question, please. So it's not a failure to miss out on a guy who didn't get traded at all.
It's a good point. It's a good point. So here we are. Okay. You've got, these are your 5 receivers on the roster, as most of you already know. Calvin Austin III. You've got Scotty Miller, Van Jefferson, George Pickens, and Roman Wilson, who I'll remind everybody is a rookie who has yet to actually perform in a game situation. All right. He's been hurt since early on in training camp. Vinny made the comment, we better hope he turns into this year's Puka. And I don't have a lot of faith he's going to do that. I have some faith he can be a contributor, but not only maybe did Khan fail a little bit in free agency, why didn't we be a little more aggressive in trying to find a number 2 guy in the draft? Now granted, if Fuatano and Frazier, I'm not going to argue with those picks. Okay. I'm a big believer in building the lines, as I think we all are. Okay. But at the same time, you draft Roman Wilson, who's not an outside guy.
No, he's a slot guy. And Wilson was the best receiver available at the time we picked.
That's true, Ian.
That is
true. Yep.
So, I don't know. I mean, there's always trade-offs with everything, right? If we hadn't drafted Zach Frazier in the 2nd round and took a wide receiver there, and then we went into the season with Herbig at center and he gets hurt, and now all of a sudden it's Ryan McCollum. People are like, why didn't we take Zach Frazier out of West Virginia?
No question.
So it's you can always play that game with draft picks, but and at the draft time, I was all in on addressing the line. So I'm not going to change that perspective because they needed help and still do, especially with the injuries to Sayamalu and everything else that's kind of happening. Fatanu's banged up. Broderick Jones has been wearing a brace on his elbow, even though he says he's fine. I mean, we're a pretty banged up unit going into week 1, especially on the offensive line. So this, new Arthur Smith offense might not go as smoothly as people think out of the gate, because banged up offensive lines are not a good recipe.
No, it's not. And we'll start right there with the roster at the offensive line, because it's I don't know if it's likely, but it's possible we could have 3 rookies starting on opening day if they choose to go with Mason McCormick instead of Spencer Anderson, who isn't exactly an old veteran. Okay, he's a relatively young guy as well. Scarps, does this give an out? Isn't the right word. Does it kind of create a built-in excuse if this team gets off to a slow start that, oh, hey, that offensive line didn't come together the way we thought because of the injuries? I mean, how do you interpret that?
Oh man, I tweeted this recently. I said that this is the first year for Arthur Smith. This is the first year with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and it's going to be the first year or second year for a lot of offensive linemen. The problem is we just finished year 7 of not winning a playoff game, and fans are already mad about a lot of things. Man, I think this team is out of excuses.
I do too.
And I know we're not doing predictions tonight, but I'm gonna set the table here and say, and I know I'm just saying that.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying that this could be Mike Tomlin's first losing season.
Oh boy.
And I don't think that's so far-fetched, because the difference between 9-8 and 8-9 is very small. I would even say the difference between 7-10 and 10-7 is very small, as we saw
exactly
last
what
year.
I was going to say. Yep.
So I think that this team is out of excuses, but I understand why I would say that they need a little bit of slack, but man, I don't know, man. And you know what? This goes back to the Arthur Smith hire, and I hated it. I loathed it so much when it happened, because it was a safe hire, and they hired Arthur Smith to salvage Kenny Pickett's career. And Kenny Pickett is no longer here, as we all know, and they have a guy that is proven, but he's older, and who knows what he has left. And then they got a guy that's unproven but has so much potential. And they're working with a conservative offensive coordinator. And I'm telling you right now, I don't know if Mike Tomlin's going to have a losing season, but I'm telling you right now that people are going to be so frustrated with this Arthur Smith offense. They're going to be fucking saying, and I thought Canada was bad.
Well,
I'm telling you right now, this first 4 weeks is going to be really tough to watch.
One of my students said to me this week, "So what do you think of Arthur Smith?" And I said, "Well, I said, trying to get back to running the ball. I was trying to be rather generic. And he says, he basically wasted last year in Atlanta with Bijan Robinson, and he didn't throw the ball. The kid just went off and just started listing everything. And I said, you know what? You're not wrong. You're not wrong, buddy. And that's my fear. That's my concern. But then when you build in these injuries to the offensive line, you're going to have a lot of youth on that offensive line. Yeah. And I'm totally with you guys in the chat. I'm not buying the excuses either. Injuries are part of the game. This is the way they've set the team up. And let's go.
And I'll make this quick. I'll let Ian go. But it's funny because, injuries are part of the game, but they have been so fortunate over the past couple years, especially on the offensive line, when it comes to injuries.
Mm-hmm.
They have been, like last year, I think except for 1 or 2 games, in the year before, they started the same offensive line on at least in 30 of 34 games or something like that. So it hasn't been, well, Chooks got demoted last year for speaking the truth, but but it's not like they've had these like huge injuries. Like this is new for them. So again, why didn't they win a playoff game the last 2 years?
Ian, you know this. Has Tomlin won Coach of the Year more than one time? I think
I
he won
don't
it
think
with
so.
He's
I don't know
never
if
won
he's won it at all.
I thought he won it kind of early on, but Vinny asked the question about, if they win 11 games, does he win it? Like, look, if this team wins 11 games, he damn well better be considered for Coach of the Year. I mean, when you look at that schedule, especially, and as we all know, the schedule last year looked tough, but then when you got to see some of the quarterbacks that they didn't have to play, and the chances of that happening again this year are fairly slim. They're gonna see a lot of really, really good quarterbacks. So, Philip mentioned never won, probably should have in 2018. That's the O-line. We know the quarterback roster is set. And again, I find it absolutely laughable. The national media, even after Tomlin names Wilson the starter, there's still people trying to make this into a competition. I get it because it's the media and that's what they have to do to create storylines. And so idiots like me will talk about it. But it's beyond frustrating. And running backs, did they bring in anybody else? There was a rumor they were bringing in Boston Scott, but
I think they signed him to the practice squad.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And he's almost kind of like a Warren in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're playing the New York Giants, he's awesome.
Yeah. Well, we do have them on the schedule this year, so maybe that's what
I think he's got like 20 career touchdowns against them or something. Not that many, but it's a lot.
Right.
But I think, moving on to other positions. So before we do that, actually, I have to say something. I was on vacation last week. I had a few drinks. I may have misspoken or not correctly remembered about how the rules are for keeping a player that you want to put on IR to designate for return, because I was thinking in my head last week that the guys they wanted to keep but designate for return, they had to keep on the 53 and then designate them to IR.
Okay.
But this year when they made the cuts, they were able to designate those guys and they didn't count towards the 53. So there were a couple guys, I believe, that they designated as, IR, but designated to return.
Right. Dylan Cook was one.
Yeah, and I think, was it Jeremiah Moon, the outside linebacker, was the other one?
It was the outside linebacker.
Yeah, so they were able to move those guys there, and like Cole Holcomb, they were able to just keep on the PUP list, and Herbig, they were able to put on, IR without having to keep them and could just shuffle them there. So they were able to open up a couple of those roster spots that I wasn't sure were going to be there. So really, I felt like the only big surprise to me was that they kept 4 tight ends, but given how Arthur Smith's offense runs, that really wasn't that much of a surprise. The other thing I'll mention, and Ryan has told us many times that the depth chart on the Steelers website means nothing, and sometimes he would just write it when he was employed there. But interestingly, about wide receivers, so George Pickens and Van Jefferson are the only players on the depth chart at their respective receiver position. And at the third wide receiver, it's Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, and Scotty Miller. Right. So according to the depth chart, which matches what our eyes tell us, we have no backup outside receivers. Unless they plan to use, Calvin Austin out there in certain situations or something like that, but which could happen.
I think,
because I don't think Austin is a slot receiver. I think he's better on the outside. It's just he's small. So yeah.
And they did bring in Brandon Johnson, who's a receiver that had a little bit of chemistry with Wilson, I think, in Denver. Again, this is not somebody that any of us should be getting our Super Bowl reservations for. All right. This is just a guy, but clearly they needed to have a guy and they brought another one in. So who knows, maybe he turns into something, but I don't think so, in that regard. Ian fact checking himself. Absolutely. Clifford, if they're terrible this year, the chance that quarterback room is rearranged next year, I think it all depends on what happens with Justin Fields this year.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're terrible, then I think we can probably assume that Russell Wilson did not play well and is definitely gone. And then therefore you're stuck with, well, do we keep Fields around? Will he have done enough, to warrant, coming back? Would you guys say he would probably be brought back on the cheap anyway, unless all of a sudden he starts most of the games?
Justin Fields?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, quarterback salaries being what they are, I think on the cheap for a quarterback, you're still looking at like $4 or $5 million for a 1-year deal. I mean, he's probably not going to take a vet minimum backup level contract. You'd probably have to look at something like, what did like Jameis Winston get this year is kind of the range of where I was
I
thinking
can't remember
for Fields. So somewhere around that kind of range, but even like Tyrod Taylor and Marcus Mariota are making $6 million a year as backups. Now, granted, they're veteran backups, but still, you've got Drew Lock making $5 million with the Giants, and he had one good game, but still, it's
So Jen points out they gave Mitch $8 million.
Yeah, for real. No, I think if they decide to move on from Russell Wilson, and if they decide Justin Fields is the guy they want to go with next year, I think, and I've said this before, and I'm sure I'll say it again, the best move is to do what Green Bay did with Jordan Love, which is you give him a 2-year deal where year 1 is minimal, year 2 goes up to like, 15 million or something significant. But you have an out, right? That if he plays well, you can sign him to a big deal. But if he plays terrible, you can cut him, or your year 1 cost isn't that much, and but you give yourself the option for that second year. So, yeah.
Scarps, are you going to? Well, first I'll let you address the quarterbacks if you want to. But the other thing I was going to ask you too is, with the Steelers only keeping 3 outside linebackers, does that mean Leal's the 4th guy?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I believe he will be. Here's what I want to say. This team has so many players that if they go down, if one of them goes down, season's over. Yeah. And like if George Pickens goes down, we're done. Obviously TJ Watt, that's an obvious one. But like, Alex Highsmith. If Alex Highsmith goes down, and everybody's gonna sit here because the little Herbig is like the flavor of the week.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's bad, but like I just, whatever. Like we fall in love with thinking this team is better than it is. So, everybody's like, oh, Leal, this is going to be great for him. Well, he was fucking inactive last year because of lack of effort. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay, did he finally like get it or whatever?
Maybe.
But anyway, sorry, we're talking about roster overall, and there's just like, I am optimistic within reason. That is trademarked, by the way, so don't use it. But there are so many. This roster's just, I don't think this roster is as good as people think it is. But getting back to the quarterbacks, so this team never sucks, and I wish they just did one time, like a 5-12 year, just so they could get a top pick and get the quarterback, for the next 10, 15 years or whatever. Because when you're drafting 20, who are you really going to get?
It's hard.
I don't know.
Yep. Well,
you get somebody out of Pitt.
You're going to get Kenny Pickett.
I set myself up for that
yes,
one.
You did.
So we saw how good that went.
Yes, yes, you lined yourself right up for that, buddy.
We saw how good that went. But
Do you think
Yeah.
Steelers fans, Scarps, do you to your point, do you think they would be willing to go through
Wait, did I get number 1 in the fantasy draft?
apparently you have. Yes. I'll be
Holy
offering a
shit.
trade for that
I got
shortly.
number 1 in my
by the
other
way,
one.
it is fantasy draft night. It's our first annual SCB Steelers Podcast fantasy draft. We will be doing an overtime tonight. Live draft right here. Even if you're not in it, join us. I'm sure it'll be hilarious.
Scarps is taking Kenny Pickett number 1.
I am.
KP1.
It's funny because I got the first pick in my other draft too, so I'm going to see how this one's going to unfold. Maybe I might do it a little bit differently.
Bill gets it. Yeah, he's Mason going number 1. That's funny too. No, do you think that Steelers fans would be willing to take maybe a 3 and 14 year?
Well, they would be calling for Tomlin's.
Well,
yes.
Would they if he's 5 and 12?
Yes.
Well,
would they if he's 7 and 10?
They're calling for his head on a stake when we went 9-6-1.
That's my point. Is it doesn't until he wins a playoff game at the very least. The pressure is going to continue to mount.
And here's the thing: if they go 7 and 10 this year, if we had won a playoff game or 2 or 3 in the last 7 years, maybe made it to an AFC title game,
right?
I don't think it would matter as much. But if they go 7 and 10 this year, after that contract extension, fans are going to be super pissed off. But Vinny brought up a good point. He was like, you can't expect him to tank. You got guys like TJ and Minka,
right,
in their primes. I'm not saying expecting them to tank or asking them to tank. I'm just like, maybe here's the best example. Nobody is better in 1-score games than Mike Tomlin. And everybody talks about how, that's never going to end. That's never going to end. Well, it's going to eventually. And I sit there and think, like, if the ball bounces this way instead of that way more often than not, you're looking at 6 and 11.
Regression to the mean,
or
baby.
5 and 12.
Yep.
And you can be a decent team with some names and suck. Look at the Raiders. Look at the Raiders for the last however many years. They have names. They got Devontae Adams. They got Max Crosby. Maybe that's all I can name right now. because they're the Raiders. But
right.
It's just like you could have names and just not either be good or just the ball doesn't bounce your way. So, good.
To build on that point, Ryan, I think one of the really unique things about Tomlin's tenure is that he's almost been immune to injury. That, like, you look at other teams, look at Baltimore the years that Lamar gets hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or look at look at Green Bay the years that Aaron Rodgers got hurt,
or that year Baltimore we lost to them. That year Ryan Mallett beat us. R.I.P. Ryan Mallett. But the year they had like 23 starters on IR.
Yeah.
And we still lost to them. But yeah, no, you're right. Like there has never been like this like really really bad injury year for the Steelers.
I mean, even the year they lost Ben in week 2. I mean, he was able
they
to
still
write
went
it.
8-8.
It's still 8-8. Yep.
Yeah. But they were 8-5.
True.
Sorry, Ian. Go ahead.
No. I was just that. Tomlin's preserved this streak of non-losing seasons, despite having years where Roethlisberger missed significant time, or having to play Kenny Pickett 25 times, or whatever else happened.
Look at some of the running backs he had to play in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that right. And every team deals with injuries, but I think the unique thing is that look at Seattle a couple years when Russell Wilson may have been healthy, but everyone around him got hurt, and that no matter who gets injured, Tomlin finds a way to scrape these things together and do it, which is to his credit, but it defies the logic of like regression to the mean math. It's like at some point this has to change, and it hasn't. So I think that's to his credit.
Do you think that he understands though where the fans are coming from. It's like, hey, Mike,
Oh yeah.
we think you're a good coach. You can make some chicken salad out of chicken shit, but man, when the rubber meets the road and you get into the playoffs, you're getting bounced.
And I just want to say this because I brought up this point earlier on Twitter, and actually it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but like I think the world of Mike. He treated me well. He was my number one reference when I left that place. And it's been 7 years and no playoff wins, but I'm still sitting here pounding the table and saying, I still think the guy's a good coach.
Sure.
But you know what? I got to see something eventually. And I brought this up on the show as a joke, but like I'm going through the all-time wins list and Tomlin is tied with Jeff Fisher. And we laugh at Jeff Fisher and we mock Jeff Fisher. And Jeff Fisher is tied for 12th with Mike Tomlin all time in the NFL history in wins. And yet we think of Mike Tomlin as this like, you can't say a bad word about him, but yet we constantly crap on Jeff Fisher. So,
I saw what you were getting at. Yeah.
But, and of course, Mike is a better coach. There's no question. But like Mike has, I think, exceeded expectations. Like we were just talking about, like he always wins these 1-score games. He always wins this and that. And it's just like, he's faced adversity, but he's never faced that like 5-12 year that Jeff Fisher
never had to bounce back.
That Jeff Fisher always seemed to face. Now, but is that a matter of being a good coach? Yes, I think it is. But is it a matter of circumstance? And I think that also plays into it too. Jeff Fisher for the last, I think 10 years of his career never had a top 18 defense. Their defense has sucked and their offensive sucks. So it's not like, but like, we keep being told that, the Steelers have the best defense in the league, yet they go into the playoffs and get smacked around.
Right. Whether it's Mahomes or Josh Allen or whomever, it doesn't matter. I want to go something. Somebody in the chat might have been Paranormal here. Welcome to the show, Paranormal.
Yeah, Paranormal.
Are they set at wide receiver? I'm going to say no. I still think Omar Khan could still be looking for something, a trade. Normally, it would have happened by now. Now that most teams set their rosters, they know the guys that they want. And I'm not saying he's going to, but I'm going to suggest he's not giving up, if that makes any sense at all. I think he might still be reaching out there to see who's out there. I know Vinny's beating the drum for Hunter Renfrow, which would be like our 6th slot guy. So I think you're onto something. The mainstream media loves Mike Tomlin. And I tend to think that's part of a little bit of what sometimes the Pittsburgh media, no, I shouldn't say Pittsburgh media, Pittsburgh fans, they turn on that because they are closer to it. They see things a little differently than the national media. You get one national writer that stops by training camp for an hour and writes a story about how the Steelers are going to be this year. And it becomes gospel. Well, you've got, guys like Alan and Nick that we talk to on the show, and they're there every single day, So I think it can get blown out of proportion both ways. And would I give up a 3 and a 5th for Cortland Sutton? Ooh, you know what? I would right now.
They're not trading him though.
No, I don't think they are either. But Matt Smith, welcome in, Matt.
My bad, Matt. Hi.
How
are you?
I would right now. I just feel that's how badly we need.
Burner's on fire tonight.
Is he? Well, no. Yeah, it is. It's a lot of Walmart greeters in many ways, and I can already see it coming. If this team loses some games, some close games late because we just can't get guys open or guys are dropping balls or something like that, fans are going to be all over Omar and Tomlin
So-
because they didn't address it.
And Vinny brings up midseason trade will happen at this point. Well, it's not going to be Aiyuk. so are we gonna and it's not going to be CD Lamb. So
No, it's not.
Turn our attention to. You know what? I'm gonna start the rumor right now about Devontae Adams. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. Let's just really get the shit rolling.
It might as well, right? I mean, if it wasn't Aiyuk, it was going to be Lamb, and I mean, shit. Bring back John Stallworth for all I care. Yeah, I don't know. The other two big issues now that the Aiyuk thing is kind of done. I shouldn't say kind of. It is done. Pat Freiermuth, Cam Hayward. Ian, what are your feelings on whether either, both, none get done? They're running out of time.
Yeah, they are running out of time with the Steelers made up deadline of the beginning of the season. You know, other teams will sign players to extensions during the season, but the Steelers have always had a hard and fast deadline of the beginning of the season. Means this is when, you know, contract negotiations stop and we're going to play out the season.
Yep.
I think Freiermuth gets done. I don't think Cam Hayward gets done. I think Cam just winds up playing for $16 million this year, and then they kind of collectively assess where he is and where they are after this year as far as continuing his career, or if they kind of encourage him to retire at the end of his contract.
The old Troy Polamalu.
Yes. Yeah. And he has been an all-time great Steeler.
Yes.
But it's just, you know, one of those things where Father Time is undefeated. And as much as I hate to say it, you know, I think some of Cam's expectations for a contract right now are not necessarily in line with his age. His performance level is still there. I don't have a qualm about his performance level in 2024. My concern is if you sign him to a 3-year deal, you're signing him, you know, not only for 24, 25, but where's he at in 26?
Yeah.
And that'll be, you know, that starts to become a bit of a question mark.
Yeah. Vinny, I really wish Ben was here tonight because he would probably be going at you, buddy, about Martavis and AB. Can you imagine? And I agree with you guys. AB coming back right now would easily be the number 2. Just purely
it's sad, but it's true.
Right. Just based on ability. I don't think that's going to happen, but you know, it's fun to laugh at. That's for damn sure. Scarps, you've been around that place when guys are in the midst of contract situations. You know what it's like. You know how you handle it from a PR standpoint. I mean, I haven't seen anything from Cam recently, meaning in the last few weeks, that suggests it's going to be one way or another. Do you tend to agree with Ian that they're just going to let him play it out this year? And if so, what does that do to him mentally? Yeah, he's got to believe he deserves a deal. I mean, I truly believe that's what he feels like.
Do I think he believes he deserves a deal?
Yeah.
Yes. Do I think he deserves a deal? I don't know.
Big diff, right?
And that's a really hard thing to say. Because Cam is the epitome of a Steeler on and off the field. He has absolutely exceeded expectations. Again, I don't think he's Hall of Fame worthy, but I think not everybody is. Not everybody is, but definitely Steelers Hall of Honor worthy. Honestly, one of the best defensive linemen in Steelers history. But you know, at the end of the day, this is a business. I can see why they don't think, I can see why they don't want to extend him now.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough call, and I've said this on the show.
Yeah.
Dan Rooney hated seeing Franco go. That was his biggest regret. But he also hated seeing Rod Woodson walk.
Yep.
And Rod Woodson went on to have
One hell of a career.
a really good career after the Steelers. Franco was done. Yeah, I think he had 1 year, maybe 2. But you know, and I've said this on the show too. If they don't re-sign Cam Hayward, fans at first will be pissed off.
Yep.
But then he'll sign with a team that's in contention for a ring.
Probably.
Fans will turn on him. They will say ring chasing.
Yep.
And that's just the way it goes.
Cecil brings up a good point, and Big Ben's burner kind of reiterates it a little bit too. Too often we get caught up on paying guys for what they've done. And that's not the business. The business is I'm going to pay you for what you can bring, what you can do. And I think those are good points. And fans got to remember that if it does come to all that. Did you ever think James Harrison would be back into the good graces of the Pittsburgh Steelers the way that whole thing went down a few years back?
I figured he would eventually, but it would take a while.
I thought it would take a lot longer.
I mean,
I thought it would take longer.
Joey Porter Sr. was there this week.
He was. That's true.
Yeah.
He's a former coach, too.
Former coach.
Yeah.
Former player who got arrested, and Art was pissed off at him. And
he shot me in Denver.
And his kid
pit bulls bit. Didn't his dog? Yeah.
And then him and Tom. Oh, it wasn't Tomlin, but he would go to North Catholic games and like fight with other people.
That is a fact. Yes.
And he's still part of the family.
But he's still part of the family. We love the family. Like, we love the family because we could never tell Joey, like, hey Joey, we're trying to win football games here. I know you want to talk shit to the defensive line, and and I know your kid plays for us, but like, I love Joey.
Bozik's in here tonight. It's nice to see he's here. Ben can't be here, but he can. I see who's dedicated and who's not.
Ben's as Chris Berman used to say, the Shane Matthews band. Former Bears quarterback Shane Matthews.
Shane Matthews.
We the Steelers, and this is Steelers fans love nostalgia. They love talking about all the old guys.
Guilty. Yep.
The problem is though, they're running out of old guys that have ever won anything.
You're exactly right.
Cam is in danger of being one of those dudes that never won anything.
He's right up there. He's going to be like Tunch.
I mean,
R.I.P. Tunch.
Yeah. Greg Lloyd didn't win anything with us. Kevin Green didn't win anything. I mean, we had some really good teams in the mid '90s that never won anything.
They won playoff games though.
They did win playoff games.
Cam has only been part of one playoff win.
That's true.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Chris Boswell has 2.
So what you're saying is that he's more in the kind of Brian Hinkle late 80s.
Yeah,
vein.
I mean, yeah, Mike. I would even say he's better than Mike Merriweather and Brian Hinkle, but excuse me, TJ Watt has been part of 0 playoff wins. So
he's a guy I would not mention that to, though. He looks like he's ready to kill somebody.
Well, that's wonderful, but that doesn't mean anything.
I know. I'm just saying he just strikes me, and I don't mean to demean Cam in any way.
No.
That it doesn't bother him too. But right now, TJ's just got this disposition about him that I don't know.
Well, and this has happened over the past 2 years now. You got guys like Cam, TJ, and Minka. Arguably the 3 leaders on defense have talked about guys not wanting it, guys not practicing hard. And I don't know if that's coaching, TikTok, or whatever is influencing these dudes. But, does adding a Patrick Queen help? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Does adding a Russell Wilson help? I don't know. Russell Wilson seems like a straight shooter. He seems like a business oriented,
All business.
all biz. But think about that though. What do you think about Good.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, a friend of mine sent me an article. I want to say New York Times. I'm not positive. Who has the most difficult training camp in preseason every year? And they did interviews, they did research, blah, 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 blah. And of course, the reason why my friend sent it to me is because the answer was the Steelers. Well, what has that gotten them? Nothing. You know, I mean, does Isaac Suomalo get injured if we have a little bit lighter preseason? Who the hell knows? I can't answer that question. But it makes you wonder, you know, does Tomlin need to back off a little bit during the preseason? Maybe. I don't know. It was just a soundbite that I was given. Finish your point, Scarps.
Well, and I have a question about that though. How much of it is like they got to sleep in college dorms? They can't like sleep at home. They're going to, but at any rate, it's, go ahead, Scarps. Finish your point. I have one other point about the roster, but go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah. No, I just, when, Cam especially is absolutely thinking about his legacy. What is his legacy?
It's hard not to at that age. It's hard not to.
And what is his legacy? Now, and it's strange. It's strange because most of us work until we're in our 60s, and Cam is younger than me. He's in his mid to late 30s, and he's already thinking about what am I going to be remembered for? And as a professional athlete, that has to be just such like a mind. It has to screw with your head. And he's given it his all on the field, off the field, and yet there's one playoff win to show for it. And he doesn't have many years left, and he knows that. So I am on Cam's side in saying I'm on his side in that he wants an extension to finish his career as a Steeler.
Yeah. No,
but I understand the Steelers' point of view. But when you're talking about TJ Watt, we're talking about one of the best defensive players over the past 10 to 15 years. Never won a playoff game. And Steelers fans are so good at making excuses. Well, it's not his fault. It's not the.
It is what it is.
It's not his fault. No. But it is what it is.
Right.
And you're right. It's what it is.
You can't run from that. It's a fact.
So,
yeah.
But anyway, this is I can't emphasize this enough. This is a huge year for this franchise. And I feel like we've been saying that for like 3 to 4 years now, but this is a huge year.
Well, I think it's an incredibly transitional year, especially at the quarterback position. As somebody noted in the chat too, the draft as of right now looks really shitty for quarterbacks. So it's not like even finishing with a bad record is going to mean that you're going to have somebody fall in your lap that you can just plug and play at quarterback. Now there's always a few guys that emerge, but there's no Andrew Lucks. There's no guys like that just have, superstar written all over them. So I agree with you, Scarps. I think it is going to be a big year. I think it's going to be incredibly transitional. Ian, you want
my guy Philip, man. Philip has some optimism. I love it.
Yeah,
they win a Super Bowl. The extent
I love it, Philip. I wish I had that, man. Ian, you had another point on the roster, didn't you?
Yeah. I am concerned about our cornerbacks. So moving over to the defensive side.
Yeah, and this is where I wanted to get to.
We've talked about this a lot all preseason, but we have 2 guys on the roster right now who have started an NFL game. Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson. Beanie Bishop has never started a game.
Nope.
Darius Rush has played in a game, but he's never started one. Corey Trice has never started a game. And then Cam Sutton's suspended for a while, so 8 games.
Yep.
But I mean, in this day and age, with the passing attacks that you see, I mean, they kept they kept 5 safeties. So, they kept
you're
5
right.
safeties.
5. Jalen Elliott.
Jalen Elliott made the team. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know exactly what they're going to do, if they're going to run some 3 safety sets with like Deshaun Elliott coming down to the box and KZ coming in to play deep or whatever.
I think they have to.
Yeah, but I just think there's going to be some growing pains there in the secondary, one way or the other, because those other guys are going to have to play. I mean, you're gonna have situations where, you know, another team trots out 4 or 5 wide receivers, and you're like, well, all right, you know, Corey Trice, Darius Rush, get on the field. Let's see what you can do. And Trice had a good preseason. You know, don't get me wrong, but just the depth on this roster is not good. We have very good high end starting.
The drop off is massive, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like we talked about earlier, 1 or 2 injuries, like there's a tremendous drop off at almost every position.
Yeah. No, I that's somewhere I wanted to eventually get to tonight, was that big discrepancy between starters and what's behind them. And, you know, every team has that at certain positions.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care if you're the Chiefs. I don't care who you are. You have a couple of those positions where your starter is great, and what's behind that starter is just not very good. But as you're pointing out, in on this particular roster, there's a lot more positions like that than we'd like to see.
And I remember, you know, you mentioned Tunch earlier. I remember, you know, listening to Tunch and Wolf's radio show. I used to listen to it religiously every day.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yep.
But, you know, they would talk a lot towards the end of the preseason, getting into the regular season, about how you really want like 3 guys at every position. You know, take like outside linebacker, right? You got your 2 starters, and you need your 3rd guy as a backup in case one of them gets hurt, and to be able to rotate in. Same with, you know, whatever position you want to pick, corner, or maybe not corner, but safety. You need that 3rd safety is really important. Or, you know, and thinking back to some of those Steelers teams of the late 2000s, early 2010s, like, think about who like that 3rd guy was, right? Like for a time, the 3rd guy on the defensive line was Brett Kiesel. And you know, they had some pretty good like guys who were the 3rd guy, or even, you know, Chris Hoke backing up Casey Hampton. I mean, they won a Super Bowl with Chris Hoke starting because Hampton got hurt.
Right.
And you know, they kind of had, you know, there was those times when like Max Starks was the 3rd guy at tackle and at offensive tackle. So this team, other than outside linebacker, where you've got Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig, I don't think we've got that 3rd guy at any position right now. I mean, maybe you could make the case for offensive tackle with Broderick Jones, Troy Fatanu, and Dan Moore.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think we've got that 3rd guy at any position on the roster.
I completely agree with you. I think that is something to consider. Absolutely. And I don't know that it's something people consider often enough. Just a reminder that we'll be cutting the show off here shortly, because we are going to be doing SCB Overtime tonight, a little special edition overtime. It's been quite a while since we've done one. This is an even special edition, because it's our first ever SCB Steelers Podcast Fantasy Football League. And for those that are in it, just remember, you got to be subscribed to the podcast to be able to watch overtime. Okay. And even if you're not involved in the league, jump on in. It's probably going to be a tremendous shit show. So stop on by. We'll probably start that about 11:25, and then our draft kicks in right at 11:30. And we're looking to have fun. And then next week it'll be all preview. It'll be predictions. We love to run down not only what we think the Steelers will do, but we will look at over-unders on guys, everything from TJ Watt sacks to Russell Wilson TD passes. We will go through it all. give you our predictions for the year. And then, of course, the Steelers will be at Atlanta that following Sunday. So a lot of stuff going on, and we're still kind of cranking our way through this episode right now. Do you think that Saturday's game against the Lions gave people some hope? Maybe.
It did, but
Maybe.
we talked about it last week on the
Yeah.
show that,
Yeah.
and I think Ryan hit the nail on the head. He's like, the Lions aren't playing anybody. The Steelers starters are going to come out and go through them like a hot knife through butter, and everyone's going to be
Right.
like, this team is cured, everything is fixed. He's like, they're playing backups, and oh man, like the second half of that game, that was brutal. It was bad football.
It was horrible football.
It was worse
Horrible.
than the USFL or whatever it is. Like it was like, we joke in the chat about like Walmart greeters and guys who are going to be bagging groceries or whatever. But it was like,
Put the fries in the bag, bro.
Yeah. And you could tell that both coaching staffs just wanted to get out of there and get the game over as soon as possible.
I thought Dan Campbell had it all over his face. Tomlin can hide it a little bit better, but Dan Campbell's face pretty much from the end of the first quarter on was like, just end this now.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was bad football, and I think it gave Steelers fans a little bit of hope and everything else. But hey, by the way, completely off football topic here. Did you see that the Steelers now have a Darius Rucker clothing collection?
No.
Yeah.
Hootie and a Blowfish?
Yeah. Hootie. And they also, apparently Abercrombie and Fitch is now in the NFL game. TJ Watt did some modeling for them. They're trying to do some old school stuff. They had like Super Bowl 40 champions and even Super Bowl 14 champions and stuff. And I don't know how I felt about that. I'm just kind of a traditionalist. Give me my Nike stuff and let me be. But I don't know. Ian?
On that note, though, as a segue, the NFL owners this week voted to allow like private equity to have a 10% stake in each team, and 10%. I didn't read all the rules, and Ben knows a lot of details better than I do. So I'll kind of wait for him to come back to talk about it. But like, a 10% stake in a team like, say, the Cowboys, who are valued at billions of dollars.
I think they just hit 10 billion, didn't they?
Yeah, versus a 10% stake in a team like, I'll say, the Jaguars or something like that, or the Panthers, that have a much lower value. I mean, an NFL team has a tremendous value on the whole, but the teams have different market values for what they're worth based on everything involved. So, can the Cowboys leverage more private equity than other teams can? Like, I wasn't entirely clear on that. Or is it a fixed amount based on some? I'm not exactly sure.
I'm not either. But yeah.
That said, it's another way for teams to kind of skin the cat of raising money for stadiums and stadium improvements and things like that. I'm sure there will be salary cap impacts down the line too, but I think mostly as far as ownership goes, or private equity involvement in the team, I think the biggest thing is going to be like, our local governments, when teams come and be like, hey, we need you to float some bonds and, fund us with these publicly issued tax financing things so that we can build these stadiums, or the local government's going to be like, go F yourselves. Like, you got this private equity now, go float some capital and see what happens.
Well,
like,
so when somebody wants a new stadium.
I mean, and Kansas City was just going through that, right? Because didn't their like county council vote down a bond issue for
the whole community did?
Yeah.
The community voted it down. And then, you got out in San Francisco, they have a 10-year-old stadium, and they just pledged to put $200 million into that stadium.
And they pay Brandon Aiyuk, and they're going to pay Trent Williams. Wow.
That's right. Yeah. You heard that, AR2?
Unlike Ben, who has lo-fi, they got Wi-Fi. They get
That's
Wi-Fi.
another reason he's not here,
Negative.
because his Wi-Fi is lo-fi.
They got Wi-Fi at Levi and SoFi in California. I'm just
Holy
saying.
shit,
Listen,
did you just come up with that?
Casey, I didn't know if we were going to Casey or not.
Well, yeah, you know what? We're 20 minutes from the start of our draft, so we need to get to Casey so that I can wrap this up and then get overtime fired up and do
one last thing real quick.
Yes.
I said this earlier on the show. I'm really starting to get concerned that this is going to be a really ugly offense.
Okay.
And I do think that Arthur Smith is more capable than Matt Canada, but I don't know if these players are. I don't know if these players are better on offense, or I think they're better to a certain extent. But anyway, let's get back to Casey.
Yeah, real quick, Cecil. We'll reveal our Super Bowl picks next week. I'm not giving up anything.
Cecil, let's do this.
Yeah. Go ahead, Casey Kasem. Let it rip, and let's hope for no stomach cramps today.
It was rough last week. Casey's Coast to Coast, American Top 40. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week that was August 29th, 1981. Our favorite correspondent, Ryan, is back with us again this week, and he writes, Dear Casey, hey, what happened to you last week? You forget to take your medicine with food? Keep it up, Casey. Keep it up, Casey, and I'll force you to go to a Dave Matthews Band show with Ben. For the record, Casey, I appreciate the Dave Matthews Band. They've just never been my thing. Kind of like Kenny Pickett and throwing touchdowns. I'm sure you've heard by now that the Steelers officially traded for 49ers wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk. Just kidding. He re-signed with the 49ers. Casey, I knew Aiyuk was never coming here, but I kept fairly quiet because I didn't want to break the hearts of the con artists. I'm sure they're wearing their con artist pajamas, tucked in their little con artist sheets, and crying into their con artist pillows as we speak. Casey, in all seriousness, I feel bad for Omar. This is his first miss, and it's a big one. He will have many more losses. He'll also have many more wins. Such is life as a general manager in the National Football League. Quite frankly, I give him credit for trying to get better. Speaking of getting better, let me return my attention to Yinzer Nation, who were clamoring for the return of the likes of Juju Smith-Schuster, Miles Boykin, and Martavis Bryant, of all people, and every other mid-player that once wore the black and gold and left. Steelers Nation, or should I say Yinzer Nation, not every former Steeler that left needs to come back. There's no need for a family reunion, because if there was one, everyone that came back wouldn't be able to walk because of their bad knees and arthritis. That's because they all suck and they have injuries.
No need for explanation.
Oh, sorry. I do miss Ben a little bit because I always hear him in the background going like this. Anyway.
It is weird being able to finish a sentence.
It is, yes. We've had a lot of dull spots tonight because I'm waiting for him to cut in.
Love you, Ben. Sorry. Love you, Ben. Casey, let's talk about real football. It's finally here. 1 week from now, we'll be watching the Taylor Swifts face off against the Edgar Allan Poes. Hark the Swifties, nevermore. I don't know about you, but those Steelers touchdown drives against the Lions, albeit against 10th stringers and plumbers, it got me all fired up. I felt hotter than Tawny Katane on the hood of David Coverdale's car.
Oh, outstanding.
But without a true wide receiver, too, I don't know what to expect. The Steelers better make it urgent. Well, Ryan, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. And keep your radio tune right where it is. Up 7 spots this week to number 8. Here's Foreigner with Urgent.
Love it. Well played. I wasn't sure where you were going with 1981.
Foreigner has some absolute bangers.
Oh, Foreigner, man. Foreigner 4. Outstanding.
I got a bunch of like greatest hits albums from a bunch of classic rock bands for our trip to the beach last week. So on the way home, we listened to like Journey's greatest hits, Foreigner's greatest hits. We had it was a good time. Like halfway through the Foreigner's greatest hits, I turned to my wife. I was like, basically every Foreigner song is about them wanting to bang chicks, but they are all like top-notch songs.
Yes, that's true. Thank you so much for everybody being here tonight. We love you guys. Love all of you in the chat. You make it so much fun for us every Thursday
You guys
night.
are great.
And thanks to everybody who tunes in at your own leisure as well. We love you guys too. So again, if you want to be part of our draft show, just want to come hang out, you got nothing else going on, please do so. It'll be at SCB Overtime right here on the YouTube page. And all you got to do is be subscribed. As long as you're subscribed, you'll be able to access it, because if you're not, then you won't be able to watch it. So that will be coming up here in about, let's call it about 6-7 minutes. We'll have that, because we got to start talking smack as we get ready for the draft. All right. For these guys, I'm Still Dead signing out. And as always, go Steelers.
Ravens suck.